Now it's time for Focus, and today, after the British Parliament cleared the way for Brexit talks, we've got a report from London on how Britons feel about the UK leaving the EU. France 24's Chris Moore also speaking to EU residents, the House of Lords having backed down over their rights. The Brexit process is set to take 2 years from when Prime Minister Theresa May invokes Article 50.
Rush hour in London, and it's tea time for this Italian. Teacher Laura's lived in the British capital for 13 years and worked in the state education system for the past 5.
Well, my students, they're wonderful. I'm very lucky because I work in a really good school.
Laura arrived aged 18 to study anthropology, leaving behind her little town in Sardinia.
I studied anthropology. I wasn't happy there. I've been in London before and I fell in love with it. I felt at home because of the multicultural society, because of, I felt free. I'm the only black
Since
person.
the UK voted to leave the EU, this confirmed Anglophile's been thinking for the first time about applying for British nationality. But reports of rising xenophobia have left her wondering if she's really welcome here.
My trust in common sense and the open-mindedness of British people was compromised for the first time. I'm more aware of the rest of the country, how different the reality is in the rest of the country, which is something I hadn't appreciated before.
The proof's not far away. Here in the borough of Havering, just a half-hour train ride from Remain voting inner London, 7 in 10 voters chose Brexit. Dave Crosby's run the family fish stall on Romford Market since 1974.
Got squid, got smoked haddock.
The 59-year-old says leaving the EU means reclaiming British waters and ending regulation from Brussels.
Over the last 10, 15 years, it's gone down, obviously, because of all the quotas and, beforehand we had our own 12-mile limit, so we could control our own fish, but now we can't. It's Europe, so hopefully we will get that back.
Dave's optimistic for the future. He says voting Brexit was about taking back political control and limiting immigration.
Once we're out, if we don't like what the politicians are doing, we can vote them out. Whereas beforehand, there's nothing we could do. We ain't stopping, the scientists or doctors, coming in, the people who've got the skills, we welcome them, we've always welcomed them. But it's the unskilled, the ones that are costing us money all the time.
The government, too, has been talking tough on immigration, and the fate of EU nationals living in the UK is likely to form a key part of Brexit negotiations. But many business leaders campaign to remain, saying the economy needs incomers, skilled or otherwise.
That access is of very great importance, so we do ask the government to make it one of the priorities during those negotiations. Trying to plug a significant gap which could be left by EU workers no longer being available with British labour is not a very obvious solution.
Around 3 million EU citizens live in the UK, over 1 million Britons in the EU. Albin Servion from France is boss of Easy Roommate, which sets up house shares for young people in 24 countries. It's HQ'd in London and employs 100 people from 12 nations. For Albin, the UK capital was the obvious choice.
London is a kind of cultural melting pot, and if tomorrow we want to launch in a new country, Poland or Brazil, it's easy to find young talent right here.
Albin runs a club connecting London's 4,500 French tech entrepreneurs. Many came here for the friendly tax arrangements and because setting up a company is easy. But now some are eyeing a move.
With Brexit, we're looking in the medium term at maybe relocating to another European city.
But Albin says the CVs are still coming in, while working in tech means you can do business anywhere. For now, he's hedging his bets.
There's no sense of panic among startups in London. Despite the uncertainty, the Brexit process will take 2 to 3 years. So we will adapt, and everybody has to prepare for whatever comes next.
London's financial district, the city, is the nerve centre of the UK economy. Many here were wary of Brexit, fearing business and jobs would go, along with the passporting rights that enable trade across the EU. But as he gears up for another dinner at his official residence, the head of the city's corporation says he now believes the government will secure a good deal from Brussels.
As we're pursuing the concept of a bespoke agreement tailor-made to suit the United Kingdom. If it suits the United Kingdom, I have every confidence it will suit Europe as well.
As cities like Frankfurt and Paris queue up to lure London's riches, the message here is that any attempt to punish Britain for leaving the EU will fail.
The fact is, London has remained the #1 global financial centre for centuries. It's always been #1, it always will be #1.
In a pub in Greenwich, we catch up with Laura and her friend James. The uncertainty created by Brexit is a major topic of conversation.
For people who are making such a big contribution to our society to have to go home, I think would be, a real terrible thing.
I'll be heartbroken because I feel like I was uprooted once, obviously, and now I feel like my roots are here. I've built friendships, I've built relationships here. My career started here, so I'm not saying it's impossible to find those things elsewhere, but it will be really difficult to start again somewhere.
On the other side of the Thames, many financiers are facing a similar dilemma.
For more on this, I'm now joined from the UK by Dr. Adrian Pabst. He teaches politics at the University of Kent. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, clearly, Brexit is still very much a divisive issue in the UK, likely to remain so for quite some while. I'd like to talk about the context, though, of these Brexit talks that will probably start happening relatively soon. I mean, they're happening the UK will be going into this already having been divided for quite some while along, some might say, north-south lines, divisions between young and old. When do these divisions date back to?
They really date back to the collapse of the post-war settlement, so the sort of settlement inaugurated by the post-war Labour government around the NHS, around public works, around national investment. And when that ground to a halt in the late 60s, 70s, the country began to be very divided. And then deindustrialisation as part of the Thatcher revolution, the financialisation of the British economy in the 80s and 90s really has sort of reinforced and exacerbated all of those divisions between north and south, between the urban and the rural, and also the younger and the older people. And I think Europe has not been the cause of it, but some aspects of membership in the EU, like freedom of movement of labour and capital, have certainly exacerbated some of those divisions.
And then you've got the case of Scotland. I mean, earlier Theresa May in the House of Commons said this isn't a time for division. Of course, yesterday Nicola Sturgeon was saying she's going to organise a second independence referendum. How much does that complicate things for Theresa May?
It looks like it could complicate things a little bit, though at the moment there doesn't seem to be great appetite in Scotland itself for a second referendum. When there was an independence referendum back in 2014, everyone agreed this was a once-in-a-generation vote. And just like there's not going to be a second Brexit referendum, it's also very unlikely the British government will now agree to holding a second Scottish independence referendum, certainly not before the end of negotiations and a formal exit from the EU. And I also don't think immediately after, because simply there isn't a case for it. The Scottish National Party might want to, but it's not even clear a majority of Scots want to have a vote or indeed want to leave. So therefore, while it complicates things politically for the moment, I don't think this will last at all, and Theresa May will simply proceed with the negotiations.
What about Northern Ireland? Earlier she also said that this is not the right time, it's not right to have a border poll at this stage. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think on both sides of the, the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, there isn't really great desire to see any border controls reinstated, as was the case during the worst times of turmoil and conflict. Really, what all this means is that the Brexit negotiations and the deal that's going to be concluded between the UK and the rest of the EU will really have to be a completely new thing. There is simply no precedent to go by. That makes these negotiations so difficult. There isn't a Norway option or a Switzerland option. And at the same time, there's a very short window because we have elections in the Netherlands, in France, and then in Germany in September. And the deal will have to be concluded by October 18. So there's really only 12 months to do something that's never been done. That, I think, is the greatest threat to a successful outcome.
Speaking of France, the Netherlands, etc., our focus report there focusing largely on EU nationals living in the UK. Do you think that the reason their rights haven't been guaranteed in the end in the bill is because they're such an important bargaining chip?
That's what it's been presented as, and unfortunately, sometimes the government has given that impression, though I don't doubt that both sides, the UK and the rest of the EU, will want to conclude that particular issue very, very quickly, because it's 3 million people in the UK who are affected, as well as over 1 million British citizens in other EU member states, such as France, Spain, and elsewhere. So I think that will be a priority for both sides. If they can come to a quick agreement on that, then I think that will also set the tone. It will show goodwill. If they don't, then really I think the whole process could be in trouble very quickly.
All right, thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis, Dr. Adrian Pabst, joining us there from the University of Kent.